Hi everyone, Lisa Haven here. Well, I want to apologize up front for what I'm about to put out because it's a topic that I am extremely passionate about, and quite frankly, I am terrified to my very core about where the United States of America is headed. And quite frankly, you should be too, especially in light of everything that is going on, because the truth of the matter is we are becoming communist China, and I believe that's the plan all along. Now, before I get into that report, I want to remind you, please don't forget to check out my partner. I partner with them because I believe in their product, but it's hidewithlisa.com. If you don't have a VPN, I want to encourage you to get one today, because a VPN hides the information that you look at over the internet. So check it out now at hidewithlisa.com, and they've got that 30-day free trial. All right, so let's just dive right into what I'm talking about, because the bottom line is, like I said before the break, that the United States of America is becoming communist China, and I mean that in every sense. If you look at just a general broad sense, we've got our colleges and our schools that have curriculum-wise been jaded and slanted towards the liberal, progressive, socialist, aka communist agenda. So it's already radicalizing, if you will, some of what's happening in our schools. Not to mention all these mandates and lockdowns and measures via the COVID-19 pandemic have really put us under bondage, and our freedoms are downright slipping out of our hand. And we already have Fauci and other officials saying that these are likely permanent or could last years and years and years, because we need to just practice these sort of things, right? But bottom line, what I really want to focus on today is what's happening over the internet, because our internet freedom is dead. It is dying, it is dead. And this is the main way. If you want to shut down one political point or viewpoint or opposition, this is how you do it, via the information battle, via what information is getting processed. And we are under attack today. Right now, I'm about to show you a senator in the United States of America who is literally telling Facebook and big tech organizations that they need to censor conservatives more, because they're not censoring us enough, when in fact, all their censorship rules have already been biased towards conservatives. The rules that they make themselves are biased towards conservatives. And this is why conservatives are not surviving online, and we're slowly being weeded out. But take a look at this article here on Breitbart.com. Dick Blumenthal, Democrat, complains that Facebook is not censoring Breitbart news enough. And it's not just Breitbart that they're talking about, it's all conservatives. Here's what the article says. During a hearing of the Senate Judiciary Committee about tech censorship, Senator Dick Blumenthal attacked the CEOs of Twitter and Facebook for not censoring enough conservative content, saying that the platforms had only taken baby steps in tackling incendiary misinformation. Now, Blumenthal goes on to make this statement, and he says, according to internal records that are now on record, leaked by NBC News, Facebook has removed fact checks and forgiven infractions for conservative pages. And pundits such as Breitbart, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and Gateway Pundit are based on a fear of accusations of bias, said Blumenthal. And he goes on to expand on that comment, and he says this. Take a listen.
Well, I'm very concerned that, in fact, Facebook seems to have a record of making accommodations and caving to conservative pressure. And the president has tried to use an executive order on Section 230 to again bully or browbeat and exert pressure on you and others in this industry. They're, in effect, working the refs, and they're winning.
So here's what he's saying. He's telling Facebook and big tech organizations there that they are caving to conservative pressure to not censor their content by allowing these fact checks that Facebook originally put on conservative content to be removed. So in other words, you're not doing enough to censor conservatives there, big tech organizations. You should not be removing these fact checks because of pressure from conservatives. That's what he's saying there. But here's what he's not making very clear, and I've wrote this in my notes, but Blumenthal isn't telling you that the likes of him and Democrats are not being censored. Democrats aren't getting fact checks all over their pages. They're not getting censored the way that conservatives are. Why? Because, and this is very important, the infractions that are created by big tech organizations are themselves biased to conservatives. They're biased to conservatives from the get-go. So a Democrat, like, the Senator Democrat there, won't have his profile fact-checked or censored because the infractions by Facebook and big tech are not targeted at his party. And so what does Senator Blumenthal do? He says you need to do it more and stop caving to conservative pressure and just censor them anyway, when he knows dang well that it's not happening to him and his side. This is unreal, and quite frankly, this should terrify you when we have leaders in our Congress stepping on our freedom of speech, saying, if conservatives are having infractions, again, that are biased towards them, then you should censor them for those infractions. This is communist China. This is exactly what happens in communist China. Here's what I'm talking about. One of these infractions, right? Take a look here. Breitbart.com. Mark Zuckerberg says Facebook censored Stop and Steal to stop violence and to stop civil unrest. So, 4 years ago, when the Democrats were screaming election fraud, and all through the prior 4 years about Russia interfering in the election, did they stop that content? Did Facebook say, we're going to stop that in the name of violence being committed because, we're just going to protect society because we're angels and gods with a little g? I think they actually have a God complex. Anyhow, I'm just livid, but they didn't stop it. Last 4 years with the Democratic Party, no, they waited until conservatives started talking about that, and then they created the infraction of, you can't talk about Stop the Steal, because according to the leftist mainstream media, that doesn't exist. So we're going to make that an infraction. An infraction, again, that's directly targeted at conservatives. But Blumenthal wants to say, do it more, because it's not affecting him and his party. You see, this is communist China. If I were a Democrat, I would be livid. I'd be like, you're not censoring that side because there's this little thing called freedom of speech. And I'm not even a full conservative. I'm like libertarian with conservative views. But this is what we're faced with in our country. Again, I'm so sorry. And here's the other part of, he wants to stop violence, right? Facebook wants to stop violence on Twitter, but there has been no violence committed in the name of Stop the Steal. None. But there has been violence to President Trump supporters at the Million Man March, where Antifa and BLM and anarchists went after Trump supporters and women and children and all of it. But their pages are allowed to thrive on leftist social media sites. Meanwhile, we have people like Biden and Obama, again, who are also calling for more censorship. Take a look here at this article on Vox.com. Obama, the internet is the single biggest threat to our democracy. President Obama loved the internet, but now he's having second thoughts. And here's an actual dialogue between him and Goldberg, right? But here's what it says. Obama says, now you have a situation in which large swaths of the country genuinely believe that the Democratic Party is a front for a pedophile ring. I was talking to a volunteer who was going door to door in Philadelphia in low-income African-American communities and was getting questioned about the QAnon conspiracies. Goldberg says, is this the new malevolent information architect bending the moral arc away from justice? And Obama says, I think it is the single biggest threat to our democracy. Now, here's the thing, right? Obama goes and gives the example of how the QAnon made every Democrat look like they're all part of a pedophile ring, which is completely false. It's not true, right? And he says it's the internet's fault and we need to give more censorship. But what does he not mention there? He doesn't mention, and the Facebook and all of them went and got rid of QAnon, and everybody should have the freedom of speech. I don't agree with them removing that content, right? I believe in the freedom, and I believe in all freedom. But they took away QAnon. But here's what he didn't mention and what they didn't do. We have people who literally believe that every single Trump supporter is a Nazi, and they actually believe that we're real racist, xenophobic Nazis. But that information is allowed online. That information isn't being censored. So Trump supporters and Republicans and conservatives are allowed to be labeled a Nazi, but Democrats are not allowed to be labeled with the QAnon conspiracy? I mean, how is that right? How is that fair and just? You're going to stop QAnon, then you're going to stop the other. You're going to stop people from actually labeling conservatives and Republican Nazis, but they don't. But they don't. It's a one-sided push. I think the internet should be free, because if not, we are full-fledged communist China. And that's just my 2 cents there. But thankfully, there are some senators who are standing against this corruption, but quite frankly, there's not enough. I'm going to be honest. We have to get more senators in there who are willing to stand against this corruption, or your next generation and your next generation's freedoms are gone, even ours. Right? And here's that. Breitbart.com, Senator Marsha Blackburn, big tech censorship as election interference. Breitbart.com, Marsha Blackburn condemns big tech cancer culture in a fiery speech. And look, you got to get on over to Restricted Republic if you want more information on this. That's all I'm going to say. Because that's uncensored, unrestricted content, and we could really dive into what's going on. But here's another one here, Breitbart.com. Josh Hawley confronts Mark Zuckerberg with evidence of internal Facebook censorship tool. And here's an actual tweet that he put out. He says, Facebook whistleblower tells me that Facebook is using an internal project management system called Task, which Facebook admitted to coordinate censorship with Twitter and Google. Here's a picture of one of those Task pages there. But he goes on to say, the whistleblower says Twitter and Google routinely suggest censorship topics, hashtags, individuals, websites. Many of them are conservative because their very engine is targeted against conservatives, and Facebook logs them for follow-up on their Task profile. But Zuckerberg refuses under oath to turn the list over of Twitter and Google's mentions on Task. We want to see what Facebook and Twitter and Google, we want to see who they're censoring and why they're censoring, but they won't give it over to us, right? Ever wonder how a user gets banned or locked on one platform and gets quickly banned or locked on the others? This is hell. Remember when the whole QAnon, they went and deleting a bunch of people? I don't agree with that theory, right? But they all, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all at the same time. These are the people we're going to take out. These are the people with no regard to fight it, to stand against it, to make your voice heard. Just one day, bam, bam. See, that's what they do. One day, you're going to commit an infraction because the bias are already set against you. And when you commit that infraction, we're pulling you off. We're erasing your content. You're gone. Sayonara. That's why I want to encourage you guys, get on over to restrictedrepublic.com. This is why I created it. And right now, we're going to do a yearly special. If you use the code BAND, you can get $20 off the yearly special. This is an amazing deal for an entire year. It amounts to like $5 a month if you do the yearly. But this is one way that we can still be heard where we're heard, and we can still stand on these alternative platforms outside of big tech organizations and still spread the truth about what's going on. I have to tell you, if you're not on these platforms, I want to encourage you to get on it. And if you're not on Restricted Republic, go on to some of these other platforms. Don't rely on information coming out of your big tech organizations, because no one knows what's going to happen. And of course, I hope the Josh Hawleys and Marsha Blackburns of the world stand against this, but they need more support. Anyhow, I love all of you. Thanks again for tuning in. Again, go to restrictedrepublic.com. Use that code BAND. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.